Público, ¿están listos? Bring it in, bring it in, bring it in.
Wow.
Online for Fantastic Four, and it's not about his acting.
I think I speak for the entire Marvel community and for those in the Marvel community that are too afraid to admit it when I say this, but as soon as we all saw Julia Garner's female Silver Surfer, we all thought the exact same thing.
We always ask, man, why does this keep happening? Why does Pedro Pascal keep getting cast? Why do executives in Hollywood keep casting Pedro Pascal?
Julia Garner, yeah, people are big mad that she's the new Silver Surfer. So let's break it all down because the film's not even out yet and the internet is in full meltdown mode.
You got me. But seriously, me and you know what we gotta do. We gotta talk about all the nonsense that's been going on around the female Silver Surfer.
¿Están listos? Bring it in, bring it in, bring it in.
Wow.
Queremos mucho a todos.
Marvel isn't just fumbling anymore, they've launched the ball straight into space, wrapped it in a mustache, and called it a cinematic reset. Fantastic Four. First Steps was hyped as the revival Marvel desperately needed, the fresh start. After years of flops, but now? It's looking more like the franchise's funeral. Just weeks before its release, the studio is scrambling, emergency reshoots, brutal test screenings leaking online, and a wave of fan backlash that shows no signs of slowing down. And leading this chaotic charge? Pedro Pascal, who's reportedly furious after Marvel axed his 6-minute monologue, an emotional speech about fatherhood that he believed was the soul of the entire film. And if you think the drama ends there, think again. Pascal refused to shave off his mustache for a flashback scene, claiming it would break the emotional continuity of his character. That's right, Marvel's $200 million reboot is being held hostage by facial hair. But the real twist? That very scene also featured a gender-swapped Silver Surfer floating through deep space, delivering a lecture on emotional labor while Reed and Sue argued about who's the better parent. This was supposed to be the film's emotional climax. Instead, the test audience burst into laughter. Marvel thought they were creating the next Endgame moment. What they delivered was a cosmic therapy session. And it's all unraveling. In slow motion, behind the scenes, the meltdown was even worse. Sources say Pedro Pascal didn't just voice concerns, he went to war over that deleted monologue. After Marvel pulled the scene due to poor audience reaction, Pascal allegedly bypassed his director and called Kevin Feige directly, demanding it be restored. When that didn't work, he tried escalating the issue to Disney's CEO Bob Iger, claiming the cut was an attack on his character and on his legacy. All this over a flashback with a mustache and a fatherhood speech that test viewers couldn't even take seriously. Marvel had envisioned a tearjerker. Instead, it played like a parody. And when the audience laughed at the wrong time, Marvel panicked. They didn't polish, they slashed. The entire scene gone. And Pedro? He reportedly snapped, but just as that controversy started boiling over, another one hit even harder. Enter Julia Garner's Silver Surfer, or rather Shia Marvel's reimagined, gender-swapped version of the classic cosmic icon. Gone was the silent, poetic wanderer Norn Rad. In his place? A floating crumb therapist with a 6-minute monologue about gender roles and emotional labor, delivered mid-battle while the rest of the team argued over parenting. Instead of power and mystery, we got what one early viewer called a BuzzFeed space lecture. Fans didn't cry. They cringed. Some even thought it was satire until they realized, no, Marvel meant every word by the time the test screenings wrapped. Marvel wasn't celebrating, they were scrambling. Reports from inside those rooms described the vibe as awkward, confused, and at times downright hostile. The scenes that were meant to land with emotional weight instead drew stifled laughter and secondhand embarrassment. One person called it a BuzzFeed think piece with a $200 million budget. Another said it felt like watching a parody only without the self-awareness. The Silver Surfer's Space Side TED Talk? Called robotic, stiff, and soulless. Rumors even spread that some audience members whispered, "Is she reading off a green screen?" And as for Pascal's grand monologue, the one he called his Tony Stark in Endgame moment, it tanked. Not a dry eye in the house because everyone was too busy chuckling. That was Marvel's breaking point. They started. Cutting Silver Surfer's lecture? Gone. Pascal's emotional climax? Erased. But by then, the damage was already done. The screenings hadn't just revealed a few clunky scenes. They exposed a movie so creatively off track, so thematically confused, it shook even die-hard fans. Internally, the studio went silent. No press releases. No statements, just ... silence. Interviews were postponed, cast appearances pulled, and the entire marketing rollout came to a screeching halt. That wasn't an accident, it was strategy. Insiders say Marvel slashed the promo budget and launched emergency re-edits. The goal wasn't to fix the film. It was to bury the worst parts and pray no one noticed. When the first teaser trailer finally dropped, it wasn't the comeback moment fans were waiting for. It was damage control disguised as hype. Not a single line of dialogue, no hint of character dynamics. Just a loud montage of exploding planets, dramatic slow-mo shots, and moody music blaring in the background. It looked sleek. It sounded expensive, but it said nothing. Insiders confirmed the obvious. Marvel stripped the trailer down on purpose, cutting out any trace of those infamous scenes, hoping audiences wouldn't ask too many questions. This wasn't a showcase of a confident studio. It was a visual smokescreen from a company trying to hide a disaster with flash and fogged out behind the curtain. Things were even worse. Marvel executives were locked in mere daily crisis meetings, trying to stitch together a salvageable film before its July release. What was once a tightly scheduled blockbuster became a jigsaw puzzle of rewrites, rushed VFX fixes, and full-blown reshoots. But no one was calling it a creative refinement anymore. Internally, it was labeled for what it really was: emergency damage control. One source even put it bluntly: it's like gluing feathers to a sinking ship. And this time, it's not just the fans bracing for a flop. Marvel itself knows this could crash hard, not just at the box office, but in how the world sees the entire MCU going forward. The cracks weren't just in the script, they were baked into the casting. On paper, the names looked perfect. Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, Eben Moss-Backrack. Big talent, big followings, but the chemistry? Flatlined. Reports from the set painted a picture of four strangers, not a family. Pascal, known for his charisma in The Mandalorian and The Last of Us, plays Reed Richards like a burnout life coach instead of a cold, genius scientist quietly burdened by the weight of saving the world. Vanessa Kirby, graceful and commanding, in other roles, is reduced to a distant, emotionally detached Sue Storm with zero spark opposite Pascal. Joseph Quinn, fresh off his Stranger Things breakout, fades completely as Johnny Storm, a character once defined by his fiery energy. And Ben Grimm? More prop than person, lumbering through scenes without purpose or punch. The soul of the Fantastic Four has always been one thing: family. Messy, chaotic, heartfelt family. That's what grounded the comics, that's why fans cared. But in First Steps, that's what's missing. There's no emotional glue, no sense that these people love or even like each other. Marvel didn't just miscast, they misunderstood. They traded character-driven storytelling for performative symbolism. They checked every box except the ones that mattered. Instead of depth, we get distance. Instead of connection, awkward silence. And instead of four heroes learning how to fight together, we get four strangers orbiting around buzzwords, hoping costumes and CGI can do the heavy lifting. What's most shocking isn't just that Marvel got it wrong, it's how confidently they did it. Weeks from inside the writer's room reveal a script packed with lectures, not lines, parenting theories, gender politics, emotional labor debates in outer space. These weren't late additions or notes from a nervous exec, they were in the DNA of the project from day one. The team behind First Steps believed they were making something revolutionary, something modern, something bold. But the result wasn't bold, it was bloated. It wasn't modern, it was out of touch. It wasn't revolutionary, it was preachy, fragmented, and painfully awkward. The Silver Surfer Backlash made that painfully clear. Julia Garner is a powerhouse actress. But Marvel handed her a version of the surfer that had none of the mystery, gravity, or pathos fans expected. Instead of gliding into scenes with quiet strength, she floated through family arguments like a cosmic counselor unloading monologues that felt like rejected TED Talks. Instead of Galactus's herald, we got a glowing therapist in Chrome. One infamous moment, a 6.5-minute speech interrupting. Reed and Sue's heated debate about their child was meant to be the film's spiritual center. But the test audience didn't cry. They laughed. Uncomfortable, confused, sometimes openly mocking. Not because they hated the idea of change, but because the execution felt so forced, so tone-deaf that it veered into unintentional comedy. When the backlash hit, Marvel didn't clap back. They didn't defend the vision or engage the fans. They went silent. Press events were quietly canceled. Cast interviews were postponed indefinitely. And the marketing machine, normally roaring, into gear months before a major release, flatlined. This wasn't hesitation, it was retreat. According to insiders, Marvel deliberately slashed the promotional budget, hoping to distance the public from the very movie that was supposed to carry their next era. Instead of hype, they released a trailer with zero dialogue, just flashing visuals and vague music, masking the chaos underneath. No characters, no voice, just noise. It was all smoke and mirrors. But fans saw through a dot that silence spoke. Volumes, because this isn't just about one messy film, it's about why it's messy. Marvel isn't just struggling to make a great movie, it's struggling to remember who it is. For over a decade, the MCU stood for something clear. Stakes, compelling arcs, flawed but lovable heroes. Now it feels like the studio is writing for buzzwords, not audiences. The characters don't evolve, they explain. The plots don't unfold, they present. This isn't storytelling anymore. It's content designed to tick boxes and spark Twitter discourse, not to move anyone. And that's not just a creative problem. That's an identity crisis. The studio that once made blockbusters that defined generations is now stuck trying to manufacture meaning out of marketing trends, and it's not working. Almost 10 years ago, Fan Fourth Stick, the infamous 2015 reboot, bombed so hard it became a punchline. Rushed production, studio meddling, a young director in over his head. It was the kind of mess everyone saw coming. It didn't just flop at the box office. It evaporated from memory like a bad dream. But what Marvel is doing now with First Steps, it's different. It's worse. Because this time, it's not outsiders who didn't understand the comics, it's Marvel Studios. The very team that built the most successful cinematic universe in history is now repeating the same mistakes. But with more arrogance, more budget and less soul. The difference is chilling. Fan Fourth Stick was a misfire, but at least it knew what it was. This is a failure wrapped in pride. A studio that believed it was making something progressive, something powerful, and never realized it was building a hollow shell. They had the time, they had the money, they had access to one of the most iconic teams in comic book history. And still, they crafted a film so out of sync with what fans love that even Fan Fourth Stick defenders are starting to say, well, at least that one didn't have space lectures on gender identity. That's where we are. The disaster from a decade ago, the one Marvel was supposed to fix, now looks like the more honest attempt. Casting Pedro Pascal should have been a win. He's proven, charismatic, a fan favorite. But as Reed Richards, the cold, calculating genius behind the Fantastic Four, something never quite clicked. Pascal brings emotional vulnerability, sure. But Reed isn't supposed to be a therapist. He's not a dad in distress. He's a scientist driven by purpose, wrestling with the burden of intellect and the pressure of leadership. Instead, Marvel gave us a burnout life coach, pacing through existential speeches and stroking his mustache like it's a character trait. That mustache, by the way, became a literal battleground, the kind of behind-the-scenes drama that shouldn't exist at this level of filmmaking. And yet, here we are. It wasn't just miscasting, it was misdirection. Marvel didn't just want a brilliant team leader. They wanted symbolism, and in chasing that, they forgot the core. Vanessa Kirby, though elegant and capable, shares no spark with Pascal. Their chemistry doesn't just fall flat, it barely exists. Joseph Quinn's Johnny Storm doesn't ignite, he vanishes into the background. And Ben Grimm, the emotional anchor of the team? Reduced to a prop, grunting through scenes with no arc, no purpose, no power, what we're left with isn't a team. It's a casting call checklist, big names and small roles stitched together with the hope that branding would carry them. But branding can't fake family. And that's what the Fantastic Four always were: messy, stubborn, brilliant, loving, a unit. And here, they're anything but. What makes First Steps sting more than anything isn't just the sloppy script or awkward casting. It's the complete emotional disconnection. Marvel didn't try to build a story rooted in heart, sacrifice, or legacy. They tried to package relevance. They mistook theme for substance. Instead of family tension that grows characters, we get therapy sessions in space. Instead of wonder, we get lectures. The movie throws in heavy ideas, parenting burnout, emotional labor, cosmic identity, but none of it lands, because none of it is earned. These aren't story arcs, they're sound bites. Inserted, not developed. Performed, not felt. It's as if Marvel wrote this movie for a marketing pitch deck instead of a theater full of fans. Every emotional beat feels artificial, like a scene written to trend online, not to move a human being. And that's the tragedy. Because beneath all the noise, the Fantastic Four is a deeply human story. It's about broken people trying to protect each other in a world they barely understand. It's about love, sacrifice, fear, failure, the kind of themes that don't need to be spoken out loud to be felt. But First Steps doesn't trust its audience. It explains everything. It performs sincerity instead of earning it. And the result is a $200 million shell of a movie, pretending to say something while actually saying nothing at all. The scariest part? This isn't an isolated stumble, it feels like the signal flare for something much bigger. Marvel used to be untouchable. For over a decade, they defined modern storytelling. They built arcs that paid off, characters that grew, and moments that echoed across pop culture. Fans didn't just show up for the movies, they lived them. They debated them, cried over them, lined up at midnight for them. Now, with First Steps, all of that feels like a distant memory. The excitement is gone. The loyalty, fading. What's left is a fanbase exhausted, watching their once great universe unravel under the weight of its own confusion. This isn't just superhero fatigue. This is identity collapse. The MCU no longer knows who it is or what it stands for. Once built on clarity, purpose, and carefully interwoven stakes, Marvel's Phase 5 has become a scattershot of disconnected characters, hollow narratives, and tone-deaf reimaginings that alienate the very fans who made this empire possible. And First Steps is the most blatant example yet. It's not just a misfire, it's a full-blown warning sign. A bloated, soulless spectacle trying to resurrect a legacy it no longer understands. And for many fans, it's the moment they realized this might not be our Marvel anymore. This movie wasn't just meant to revive the Fantastic Four, it was meant to reset everything. First Steps was supposed to launch a new tone, a new timeline, and bridge the MCU toward massive events like Secret Wars and the long-awaited X-Men reboot. It wasn't just another film. It was the foundation stone for Marvel's next decade. But instead of building hype, it's collapsing under its own weight and dragging every future plan down with it. Because if Marvel can't even get this team right, the original blueprint, the first family that inspired every Avengers storyline that came after, then what's left to believe in? If First Steps fails, it doesn't just underperform at the box office. It shatters confidence. In the studio, in the vision, in the promise of a larger payoff. And without that trust, Marvel's entire strategy crumbles. Why should fans invest in multiversal setups or mutant cameos if the present is this creatively hollow? Secret Wars can't thrive on nostalgia alone, neither can the X-Men. People need to care again. But First Steps doesn't reignite that spark. It smothers it. What was supposed to be a triumphant rebirth now feels like a desperate gasp from a studio hoping brand recognition will mask narrative bankruptcy. And the audience? They're waking up. This collapse hits harder than anything Marvel's faced before, not because the movie is bad, but because it feels proud of how empty it is. First Steps isn't just a miscalculation, it's a betrayal. A betrayal of the characters, the fans. And the stories that built the very empire Marvel is now blindly coasting on. The Fantastic Four were never supposed to be trendy. They were timeless. A messy, brilliant, loving family of misfits who changed the world together, not despite their flaws, but because of them. And now, they've been reimagined as hollow. Archetypes, each one reduced to a checkbox or a headline. Stripped of heart and rebuilt for clout. Marvel once knew how to tell stories that moved people. That reminded us of who we could become if we fought for something bigger than ourselves. Now it's clinging to fading nostalgia, smearing it with CGI, and praying no one notices the soul is gone. This wasn't just a stumble. It was a faceplant. A desperate lunge toward modern relevance that landed miles away from emotional truth. And it begs the question, was this always the destination? Was this what Marvel was becoming all along? Because if First Steps is the future, if this is how Marvel reboots its legends, then maybe the golden age really is over. Maybe the MCU didn't just lose its way. Maybe it lost its reason to exist. See, tell me, is Pedro Pascal the problem or just the symptom? Is Silver Surfer's monologue the failure or the mirror? And after this ... is there anything left to save? Drop your take in the comments. Because whatever comes next, Marvel's about to find out just how loud silence can be.